Hi, and welcome to Dark Window. I'm your host, Jim Mann. Here on this program, I will be talking with many of the leading investigators, researchers, and authors on the topics of UFOs, UAPs, alien abductions, extraterrestrials, and a host of many other fascinating and related topics. So please join me and my guest for the next hour as we reach out. This is Dark Window on KGRA Digital Broadcasting. And hello, everyone, and welcome to Dark Window. Now, my special guest tonight is James Fox, movie and documentary film director and I believe producer. Now, James began his journalism career early in life as an assistant to his father, the writer Charles Fox, a quadriplegic with multiple sclerosis. James did a number of magazine assignments, he interviewing Stephen Hawkins, race car legend Dan Gurney, for Rolling Stone, Car and Driver, and Sports Illustrated. Now, James is very well known for some of his great movie documentaries, Out of the Blue, I Know What I Saw, The Phenomena, and his latest release, Moment of Contact. James has also done numerous TV projects for the Sci-Fi Channel, TLC, National Geographic, and the History Channel. And so, welcome aboard, James. And how are you doing?
Thanks for having me on, Jim. I'm doing good.
And how's things going out there in, what is it, Vermont?
Yes.
Great.
It's nice and cold. We want a little more snow. My body loves the cold. So, it's beautiful. And there are no bugs in the winter, which I love.
Great. Yeah. That's kind of like the same way here. I mean, we don't get the cold snow that Vermont gets, but enough for the weather. I mean, I live in Arizona. I'm right here in Phoenix.
Actually, I remember coming to Arizona when I was investigating the Phoenix Lights,
Right, yeah.
And I was coming there a lot. And, 97, 8, 9, 99, I did some follow-up stuff. I mean, I was really fascinated by
Right.
I guess those who witnessed the Phoenix Lights don't like it to be called Phoenix Lights. It was the massive UFO flyover. But I remember being there in the summertime, and it was like 100 degrees in the middle of the night. And I said, "Is this normal?"
Oh yeah.
How do you guys do it?
We have air conditioning.
I love Arizona. I've been down the Grand Canyon and Wooden Dories, and I've driven all across I love Arizona. But
we love it when you're here visiting us too, James.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I love Arizona. Arizona, New Mexico, Nevada. Montana, Wyoming, just all those, the Southwest, just stunning.
You have, speaking of Phoenix and the Phoenix Lights, you have done wonders for the UFO phenomena, opening people's eyes. Your movies from way back in the 90s with Out of the Blue. What was that one before Out of the Blue?
UFOs, 50 Years of Denial. I actually went to the 50th anniversary of Roswell. It was amazing. We were all in that old hangar where it all went down.
Right.
And Philip Corso was there. And I know that he's a bit of a controversial character, but I certainly believe that he believed what he was saying. He was there. All the press were there. There was lots of pressure on the current administration for transparency on the case. There was, Congressman Stephen Schiff? Congressman Schiff. What was the gentleman's name who died? He was putting significant pressure on
Harry Reid?
No, I'm so sorry. It was during the 90s.
Oh, during the 90s.
His name in a second. But he was from New Mexico, and he was putting significant pressure on the government to come clean, and that he was getting the runaround. So anyway, Roswell had just a lot of attention back in 1997, and it was one of those events where I got to see the last remaining people that were from that era, from 47. They were on most of them are gone now. So it was a very exciting time to be there for the 50th anniversary.
Jesse Marcel and those guys were still alive.
Yeah. Jesse Marcel Jr. was still alive. Mm-hmm. Senior was dead, but I think Glenn Dennis, the mortician, the guy that put the press release out, he was around, and a number of other witnesses. I'll never forget. It was an exciting time.
I met the granddaughter or great granddaughter of the Brazzles.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I think we did an archaeological dig. The Phoenix MUFON group did an archaeological dig in 2013.
Was
And
that with Larry Landsman of the Sci-Fi Channel?
no, I was with Don Schmidt, and he organized the whole thing. Don Schmidt and what's his name? Kerry. I'm sorry, Don's partner there.
Kevin Randall.
Well, Kevin Randall was there. Yeah. Well, there was a lot of people there. But anyway, that's where I met a great granddaughter or a great great granddaughter.
Wow.
Yeah.
I heard through the grapevine that Mac Brazel's son had kept a piece of that UFO crash from the UFO crash, and then he was bragging about it in a bar. I believe Stanton Friedman told me this story. He was bragging about it in a bar, and the next day, men in suits showed up at his house and took it.
Really?
Yeah. But I've talked to people fairly recently in and around that area, and they confirmed for me that there are people out there, ranchers, that still have bits of that UFO.
I don't see how they wouldn't. I mean, I just don't believe that everything has been recovered from that crash.
No, absolutely not. Well, look, there was a certain period of time where Mac Brazel gathered that up. I'm sure he told his friends and neighbors about it. People just slipped a piece of that. I mean, wouldn't you? I would have.
Absolutely.
I would have said nothing. I talked to somebody who actually held one of it in his hands too. He'll remain anonymous, but I spoke to him and he described exactly what it was like.
Yeah. Well, you need to remain anonymous, because you never know.
Oh no.
Okay. Well, speaking of all of this, James, okay, all of your schooling was in journalism.
Well, I didn't really get an official college education. I did go to college for a few years, and believe it or not, I studied French. My dad, I guess I got my journalism education because my father was paralyzed from the waist down and then ultimately from the neck down most of my adult life. And so I would travel with him on assignment for different magazines. And so I got to see his interview techniques and writing and be his assistant, his secretary, his nurse, his chauffeur, very, very early in life. And so I guess you could say that kind of got me into journalism.
So as a journalist or journalism, and you were involved with it, what was it that brought you into the whole UFO subject, the whole topic of UFOs?
Well, it's kind of simple. I had a friend of mine that when we graduated from high school, we went to Europe, and we actually went to London, and we bought an old car, a Fiat 131, and we drove it all the way to Portugal. It was this classic adventure back, being teenagers. And we had a really close relationship. He was one of my best friends. And probably about 2 years after our trip, maybe 3 years after our trip across Europe, and he started talking about, aliens, spaceships crashing and UFO reality and huge government cover up. And honestly, I thought he'd lost his mind. And I remember saying to myself, well, it's been a great relationship with this guy. And unfortunately, he's lost his marbles. And I guess I mentioned some of the stuff that he was talking about to an associate at this video production house that I was working at in Northern California, and a guy that I tremendously respected, this guy, Richard Van Sickle. And he goes, oh yeah, you didn't hear about Roswell? And this is like early 90s. I said, no, I didn't hear. How would I hear about No, I haven't heard about Roswell. He goes, oh yeah. He goes, the military actually admitted that they recovered a flying saucer. It was them. And that the vast majority of people that were involved in the cover-up have since, made statements on camera that it was really from another world. I was like, oh my, come on. So I started looking into it, and I was doing video production at the time. I was doing PSAs and public service announcements. And I went to a couple of conferences, and I met a few military guys. I offered my services as an editor and a camera guy in exchange for kind of an inside scoop and making up relationships with some of these former military guys. And I decided probably in 93, 94 that I was going to make a film on the topic. And I was just naive enough to think that I could pull it off.
Wow. And everything, and leading up to today, you've got so many good UFO related documentaries out there. You have been one busy man. One of the best UFO documentaries you did, I think, in my opinion, other than this moment of, well, they're all great. I don't want to really, let me digress here. Everything that you have published is fantastic. My favorites, which got me going in ufology, was Out of the Blue.
I get that. It's so funny. I talk to people. I was like, oh, the phenomenon. They're like, yeah, the phenomenon was really good. I enjoyed that a lot. But Out of the Blue, really, still my favorite.
You knocked it out of the park on that.
I watched Out of the Blue on a big screen at a it was a film festival in Sonoma a few years ago. And I was like kind of cringing, waiting for it to start because it's been a while since I'd seen it. And I thought, well, how's this film going to hold up? And you know what? It was pretty damn good. I got to say, I was like, wow, this film holds up after all these years. I mean, the film's over 20 years old now.
Yeah, it still does.
I did a
great filmography. Yeah.
Yeah, I did a modern. Yeah, I did a look at that. I got Michael Shermer to give me a quote. Isn't that funny?
And Peter Coyote.
Yes, that was a coup.
Wow.
Yeah, that was a coup. That was a coup.
Yes. And you've used him again in Moment of Contact.
Yes. And The Phenomenon.
Oh, you're right. He's in The Phenomenon.
Yes. Let me tell you a story about Michael Shermer.
Oh, okay. Tell me about Michael Shermer.
Michael Shermer being the skeptic. I mean, it's his job, right? And I thought, what do they say? You have your friends close and your enemies closer, right? Not that Michael Shermer's an enemy or anything, but, so I sent him an email. Somehow I got his email. And I said, sir, I've got this film coming out, and I'm wondering if you would be willing to take a look at it. Sure. So I sent him a link, and I didn't hear back. And I don't know, I might have waited a week or two, and I said, hey, did you watch the film? Yes. That was it. So I emailed back. I said, well, did you enjoy it? Like yes. I said, okay. This guy is like extracting, it's like pulling teeth trying to get this guy to say anything. I said, well, would you be willing to give me a quote? Yes. And Leslie Kane is calling me right now. I'm going to stop that. And I said, and I was like, okay, what kind of quote? And then he wrote me that amazing, quote. I mean, he, basically kind of endorsed it. It was really cool.
That's amazing for him.
But I don't think he wanted to do it. It was so funny because it was like he was so terse with his responses. It was like, yeah, well, what I'm all, of course I want a quote. Yes, that was it. Yes. You want yes? Did you like it? Yes. Will you give me a quote? Sure. And then he,
that's because I think everything you had there was rock solid.
I think it kind of shocked him a little bit, know?
Yes, it did. Now,
it's kind of hard to deny that something, something's going on.
Well, when you start actually interviewing the actual people, and these are all credible people.
Yeah.
These are not guys that are half drunk fishing out in the boat. These are credible people.
You know what, though? One of the best witnesses for me, and I've met a lot of amazing witnesses.
Right.
One of my best was Ricky Sorrells in Texas. He was the deer hunter. He was a metal worker.
Okay.
2008 case. You remember Stephenville?
I do, yes.
Out of all the people, all the astronauts, all the generals and the pilots and the FAA officials and everybody, Ricky Sorrells is on my top, probably my top 5.
You don't hear a lot about Stephenville anymore.
You don't. And how often do you hear from a witness that you believe?
Yeah.
Who you had to basically wrangle for the better part of a year to get him to come forward on camera, describe observing the belly of a spaceship, potentially, through the scope of his rifle. and looking at the metal and just being fascinated and dumbfounded by the lack of rivets and structure and beads and welds and anything that would resemble terrestrial craft. It was all so alien, excuse the pun. And there was something so simple about his testimony, so compelling, that it just really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Listening to Rick Sorrells and how close he came to pulling the trigger to see if the bullet would bounce off the belly of this thing. So right at the top of him, he's kind of hovering with his finger over the trigger, and he's looking up through the scope, and he's examining the belly of this thing, and he's describing in vivid detail what the metal looked like, the color of the metal, like all these just amazing descriptions. And then hearing him contemplate pulling the trigger, he's like, well, I was just wondering if it would like ping off the side of it or if it would ricochet off. And he was just about to pull the trigger, and he thought, maybe this isn't such a good idea.
That was a good idea.
Probably wouldn't. I don't know, man. It probably wouldn't have ended well.
A lot of people say when they see these things up close, there is this Aztecing underneath. It's pipe, or not necessarily pipes, but it's technology up underneath the craft. It's not just a smooth surface. They can see it. They can see how it's put together. They can see other kinds of technology coming out. And
he talked about these inverted cones. Like if you have an ice cone,
right,
like a cone, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you reversed it upside down and then recessed it in the belly of the craft. He said it had all of those, like these recessed inverted cones. Yeah. But I mean, I also talked to families in the Phoenix Lights case that were lying on their backs on their front lawns, 8:00 at night, 8:30, the whole family. And this object, boomerang shaped, floated over the top of them so slow and so low that he said it looked like a floating city. It looked like it was going to land. All these compartments, and they said it was like a city. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Speaking of the Phoenix Lights, your next book, I Know What I Saw.
Yes.
When did you write, or when did you not? It wasn't a book. It was a movie. Sorry.
So
movie. When did you do that one?
So I was. Wait, is that Steven Spielberg on there? It is compelling, isn't that great? I was basically revisiting out of the blue, because when you finish a film, usually what happens is you're out of money, your team is exhausted, everyone's underpaid, overworked, and sometimes you have to put a piece out where it doesn't feel as your initial conception of something. It doesn't materialize exactly like you want it to. The end result just doesn't. It's not representative of what you initially intended to accomplish. But sometimes it's like, you're exhausted and it's good. So I was revisiting out of the blue, and I had a number of target interviews I wanted to do. One of which was the governor of Arizona, Fife Symington, the former governor.
Fife Symington, yes.
Yeah, and I got that interview, and I remember my other producers at the time were like, well, what's he going to say? Like, they were kind of hesitant as to whether or not we should even go. What is he going to say? I said, who cares what he's going to say? It's the former governor of Arizona. We're going to go. So anyway, then of course he admitted to having seen the thing and looked into it at the highest levels, and everyone shrugged their shoulders and said, we don't know what that thing was. And that was edited into the director's cut of Out of the Blue. And then I did the National Press Club event with Leslie Kean, because I had a lot of media attention at the time, and I figured I might as well strike while the iron's hot and keep the momentum going. And then I ended up kind of slipping into the formation of the new film, I Know What I Saw, but it was kind of like parts of Out of the Blue and so I kind of put Out of the Blue on hold, the director's cut, and I just transitioned right into I Know What I Saw. And people were telling me that you can't make a documentary about a bunch of old retired military guys standing at a podium. And I said, well, who was
yes, you can.
Well, I said, well, who was the guy? Al Gore made a documentary on a PowerPoint presentation about climate change, and that was a big. So of course, it can be done. So I ended up doing, making I Know What I Saw, and that's based on an event we did at the National Press Club, and I'm very proud of it. I think it's a great piece of work.
As you should be, James. so far, everything that you've produced, everything that you've directed is as a state director from the Mutual UFO Network for 15 years, 10 years the state director, 5 years the county director. Without your movies, we'd have had a hell of a lot of explaining to do. Your movies have made this easier for us to talk about. And especially I Know What I Saw, okay? Because Lynn Ketai did hers.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you came after that with I Know What I Saw. And so both of those movies just has really put the Phoenix Lights or the massive flyover really on the map. And I think that this is probably as big, if not bigger, than the Roswell incident. Other than the fact we don't have any empirical data laying on the ground. We don't have any evidence, but we have thousands of witnesses. And
I was going down. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that very much. Sometimes it feels rather lonely, out there. This is my edit room right behind me. If you see through the glass, that's where I made Moment of Contact. But it's kind of lonesome at times because you kind of forget you're doing what you do and you're doing what you love to do, and it's hard, and you kind of forget that there are people out there marching with me, and it's nice to hear from them. It's nice to know that that I'm supported in what I do and that I'm appreciated in what I do. It's really nice to hear that because, like I said, I mean, sometimes it can feel a little lonely. You kind of forget that there are people out there that admire what you do and support what you do, and it's a great feeling, and I should be so fortunate to be in that position. But it's always nice to hear it.
Well, let's just jump forward to Moment of Contact.
The craziest story in the history of UFOs.
Holy smokes.
I challenge anyone out there to tell me a crazier story than the 1996 Varginha incident, because wow, nuts.
How did you, I don't even know what to ask here. I've watched this movie twice here recently.
Yes.
You got down and dirty down there.
I did, yeah.
You got in their face. There was people that talked to you that wouldn't normally talk. And there was people that wanted to, they were off camera. And you almost got yourself shot at one point. So what got you going on this? Was it just a topic that you said, oh, let me go investigate this? Or is there more to it than that?
I heard about it at the beginning. I was making out of the blue. When you start a film project, it's like, you start off with sort of broad strokes and you think like, okay, what do I want to do? And you start to kind of map it out. Like, oh, let's go here. Let's do this case, possibly this case. We'll link it together with that case, and you kind of just get a broad idea of what it is you want to accomplish. And I was working in the late 90s with a gentleman named Tim Coleman. He was a co-producer on Out of the Blue, and he's a British guy. He's like, oh, mate, we got to look into that incident that happened in Brazil. I said, what incident? What are you talking about? He goes, the UFO that crashed and the live aliens are walking through the town. And I thought, oh God, I think I picked the wrong partner. This guy's clearly lost his marbles. Yeah. Like, to me, it was inconceivable that a UFO could crash, the aliens could survive, reportedly walking through a town, cowering, hiding, and the whole world not know about it. So I dismissed it in the late 90s, and much to the disappointment of my partner Tim at the time. I mean, he was kind of upset with me that I just dismissed him and the case, and I didn't look into it at all. In fact, I wouldn't read one article on it. Fast forward to 2010 or 2011, A.J. Javard, bless his heart, he just passed.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, A.J. Javard, he's a Brazilian researcher, UFO researcher. Anyway, he invited me to give a presentation in a place called Peruíbe, which is the south of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And just talk to him about, I know what I saw, and probably out of the blue, just give a presentation. And he invited me down. And before I went down, somehow word got out, and I got a phone call through a guy by the name of Jeff Sagansky. He's very high up on the entertainment industry. And he's like, "Oh, James, you're going to Brazil. You got to look into the Varginha UFO crash incident from '96." And I was like, "Oh God!" And this guy, Jeff Sagansky, had helped me sell. He was very influential behind the scenes. He was very high up and you can look him up. And I had tremendous respect for him and appreciation and grateful for all the things that he did quietly behind the scenes. So I wasn't going to just dismiss him in the case. And I just sort of said, "Sure, Jeff, yeah, I'll look into that." Click, no intentions of looking into it. I went to Brazil and I went to this conference. And at the conference, I met a few researchers and witnesses from the Varginha incident, and that kind of piqued my interest. And then I kind of stuck my teeth into it in 2011 and never kind of let go.
Wow. Now, there's parts in that movie where you guys are actually standing out on the street corner with signs.
You know why I did that?
Yeah.
I did that because I don't know. The population is about 130,000 people. It's about five or 6 hours north of Sao Paulo, in the state of Minas Gerais. And I did that because I'm thinking, if a UFO crashed and they had military trucks cordoning off certain regions, and live aliens witness and people involved in capture and all these, surely everyone in the town would know something about it or heard something. So let me go downtown Plaza and just start talking to random people. And it's exactly what I anticipated is what happened.
How were you received?
Well, I mean, I don't know what the percentage of people that stopped and talked to us and shared some aspect of the incident, but it was like 30 or 40%.
No kidding.
Oh, yeah. My cousin saw this. My mother had this. My brother, came upon a military blockade. We've never seen a military presence like that since. My friend dated the girls that came in direct contact with the live creature. I mean, it was like that. People saw the UFO activity.
Now, these entities were walking around town.
Yes.
These aliens.
Yeah, I know.
People were scared to death.
Yeah. Nobody said alien. It's like you talk to Carlos de Souza, one of the witnesses that allegedly saw the thing crash. Nobody thought alien. Everyone was thinking, like, the girls were thinking it was the devil. They were Christian. They were freaked out. They thought that what they saw might have been a demon.
Right.
Carlos de Souza just never thought alien. The guy that the ultralight pilot that was driving to the north at 5 o'clock in the morning, whatever, and saw this cigar-shaped, this cylinder-shaped metallic craft with a gash in the side of it and white vapor coming out the backside. He didn't think alien. He came upon the crash site, didn't think alien. And then as slowly as more reports came out, more witnesses reported different weird encounters. They slowly put it together that there was a spaceship that crashed and some aliens survived.
Where did this thing crash at? I mean, what part? It didn't crash in town.
I would say no, around the outskirts, probably 6 to 8 miles outside, and on a farm called Maiolini Farm. As the crow flies, I'm told I don't know, right, 12 kilometers or something like that. And the weird thing is that when this thing crashed, the primary witness, Carlos de Souza, and there are other people in the town, a couple, Eurico de Freitas and his wife, Orlina, and 2 farmers that saw it for some time, struggling to maintain altitude with the gash and the white vapor, no wings, no tail, no sound, just struggling. Looked like it was gonna crash, but they didn't see it crash. And then, Carlos disappeared. He gave one statement to a guy to a guy named Claudio Covo, who's an engineer and a Brazilian UFO researcher, and he gave a statement on camera, and then he vanished for 26 years.
Yes.
Yeah, which my partner Marco Leal and his fellow Brazilian researchers, because I said, look, we don't really have a story. We don't have a documentary if we can't find the guy that saw this thing crash. We got to find him. We need to find other people that were involved, as a military base, which is the point of operations for all the recovery and everything that went down. We had doctors that were involved, Humanitas Hospital, regional hospital. And that took the better part of 11, 12 years. And in fact, longer if you look back at what my friend Marco, co-producer Leal, was involved, I think since he was 18 years old, 16 or 18 years old, and he's now 35 or 36.
Yeah. Now, who was the one that led you around town to go to all these places? I mean, you obviously weren't real familiar with the town where everybody lived. You must have done a lot of detective work.
I did. I mean, I went downtown in 2012, 2013, again in like 2014. And I was knocking on doors. I was asking random strangers. I remember the sound guy that was from Rio, and he thought I was nuts. He's like, well, I was like, well, if you don't try, nothing's going to happen. And I was like, we have to find the sister of the deceased military officer who allegedly handled one of these creatures, Marta. We needed to find Marta Tavares. We needed to find Carlos de Souza. We needed to find any doctors that worked on Marco Chirizi, the military officer, police officer who allegedly handled this thing and then died. So tracking all those people down. There were times when we were literally just asking people in the downtown plaza, knocking on doors. I mean, we literally did that.
Wow, that's something. I saw that you obviously had talked to some people that were reputable and they didn't want to be on camera. No. So you talked to them from behind.
It was really precarious because when we got there, this last trip, what was it, 2021? We had kind of lined up some big interviews, but they were like, I don't, And so I said, well, we're going to post up. We're going to be there for a month, and then we're going to get there, and we're going to cross our fingers and just pray to God that we get, somebody. And magic happened. People agreed to meet with us. What we'd initially do is say, look, just come and meet with us off camera. We'll talk, get to know each other a little bit, make you feel comfortable. Like, what is it going to get you to come forward? Hey, if you disguise my voice and you film me from the back of the head, I might consider doing that. And so
I noticed you guys did that
on a couple of options. It was the only option we had. It was either that or we weren't going to get them.
Well, now, as the creatures walked through town, were they cowering? Were they looking for?
They were weak. They were described as being feeble, non-threatening, couldn't move very well. They were weak and feeble and suffering. According to all the witnesses, they were suffering. They were not threatening or they were benign. They were scared and cowering and suffering in the heat. In January in Brazil is the middle of the summer, so it's very, very hot there.
I saw some pictures. These things kind of look like the Greys a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. I mean, if you look at my previous work, I don't generally cover so-called aliens in any of the. I mean, I did 50 Years of Denial. I covered Roswell. And I think I might have done a brief description of what they reportedly looked like, according to the witnesses that seen them.
Right.
But other than that, if you look at Out of the Blue or I Know What I Saw, I don't get into Close Encounters of the Third Kind at all. In fact, the phenomenon after 25 years, 26 years of doing docs on UFOs, that was the first time I ever covered really extensively Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I covered Socorro, New Mexico, 1964, with Officer Lonnie Zamora. I probably covered one of my first significant landing cases, Rua, Zimbabwe, aerial school, close encounter. I covered the Westall, 1966, Australia, the landing. And while I was in Australia, there were some witnesses coming forward I didn't have time to investigate that claimed that there were entities in white coveralls, but I didn't look into it and I didn't include it in the film. But that was coming out a little bit when I was there in what was that, 2000, probably 2017, 2018, something like that.
Right. Did anyone actually recover anything or from the crash site
From this one?
Like an artifact from the crash site?
Carlos had something in his hands when the military got there. He said it was like a field of he said it was like a maybe a size of a football field of metallic foil-like debris with a large section of the craft still intact. That was like the whole thing was shaped like a cigar, and he had a piece of it in his hand. He said he crumpled it up. He wasn't thinking alien. He really thought it was a maybe experimental government craft that he came upon, and that people inside needed help. And that's when the military arrived, and they were extremely aggressive and threatening with their guns at him, and they took a piece of metal that he had in his hand away from him, and he was forced to leave. And it wasn't until the reports came out of the entities that Carlos suddenly realized that maybe what he saw was not of this earth, Wow. But again, nobody was really jumping to that conclusion.
Now, somebody had actually put their hands on one of these entities, and the fella died.
Yes.
What was that? What was that story?
So we interviewed his sister, Marta Tavares. We interviewed the doctor who worked on him, Dr. Cesario, in Varginha, and his name is Marco Chirizi. He was a military police officer, and I guess when you're in the police or the fire department in Brazil, you're part of the military too. And he was off duty that night, and his friend that he grew up with, who's also a military police officer by the name of Eric Lopes, came by his house. It was a rainy evening. Late, it was, I don't know, probably 4:00 in the afternoon, and told him that he was on the lookout for some strange thing, like something terribly unusual. Would he like to join him? And so Marco Chirizi jumped in the car with Eric Lopes, and they were on the lookout for something totally unusual. They weren't told a UFO crashed and there were none of that. And they were driving down this road, which coincidentally was...
So they had no clue.
No clue. It was just a few blocks away from where the girls had the encounter around 3:00, January 20th, 1996. A couple blocks away, they're driving down this road, and lo and behold, this little strange creature comes right across the road, right across their path in front of the car. Eric slams his brakes on, and Marco Chirizi jumps out without a moment's hesitation and grabs the creature with his bare hands, puts it on his lap, and took it to the hospital. And he got a cut. Marco Chirizi got like a scrape under his armpit, somewhere in here. And he had this greasy, smelly oil all over his body. He was rubbing it down with rubbing alcohol, trying to get this oil off of him. And then this infection got kind of worse. And a couple of weeks later, he admitted himself to the hospital. And the doctor said that, and he said this on camera, he said he did everything he could. He threw the kitchen sink at him in terms of antibiotics. And he had something that was untreatable. He'd never seen anything like it before, never seen anything like it since. And perfectly healthy 23-year-old military police officer, Marco Chirizi, died. The doctor on duty the day of his death, according to his sister, wanted to put him in the ground immediately, like as soon as possible.
Right. Well, that's pretty scary stuff.
It is really scary stuff.
If something like that gets out into the public, I mean, we've got no defense against it.
So people, I didn't speak directly with Marco Chirizi's mother, but I spoke to Marco Chirizi's sister, Marta.
Right.
She says this in the movie, and I asked her, what did the military tell your family? I mean, you lost your brother.
Right.
And she said that the military only once came to our house, pulled my mother aside, and said that it's true what happened with your son, and that if this story got out, society would collapse. And I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm not saying that's what would happen, but that's, according to the sister, what the mother was told about the death of her son.
Amazing. Now, in the movie, in your documentary, you go to see somebody who is armed. He actually threatened you guys.
Yeah.
What was that? What was that about?
So I'd heard about the driver,
Right.
Eric Lopes, for over a decade. And the sister is saying that the family couldn't get a statement from him, that he'd been in hiding. He'd refused to talk to anybody. He refused to address, what happened with the family. He never said it didn't happen. He just wouldn't say anything. And so Martha encouraged me to find Eric Lopes, the alleged driver, who's the only witness alive to the event of the second capture of one of these beings, to find him and get a statement from him. And so I used the town mayor, Verge. We met with him as he was mayor, not retired, current mayor of Varginha. And he said, look, I really appreciate you guys being here, doing what you're doing. I believe that the incident is real. It really happened. He admitted that he didn't have any personal, he didn't witness anything personally, but he talked to a lot of people that did, and he believed that it happened. And he said, well, if you need any help while you're here, let me know. I said, yes, I do need help. I would love to track down Eric Lopes. So he said, let me help you with that. And he did. And he got Eric Lopes's address. And I met in the town square, just outside the town square, with some contacts, one former police chief and his son, this guy Homolo, who used to be a politician, is now a lawyer. And they said they agreed to escort us to Eric Lopes's house. And as we were about to take off from the town square, and I was going to follow this black Mercedes, I stopped everybody. I got the translator and I ran up to the car in front of me. They were going to just take us to the location and just, here it is. Good luck. And I said, actually, would you mind walking up to the door with us? I just had this little voice in the back of my head. It's like, you know what? Might be better. So I got this guy, Homolo, who grew up with Eric Lopes, who knew Eric Lopes, hadn't seen him in 20 plus years. And he said, yeah, I'll do that. And so he walked to the door. And honestly, I really feel like that saved my life, because I think that had it just been me and my crew, he might have just opened fire on us justifiably. He might have just opened fire on us because he was already, even with someone that he grew up with, who was a famous politician and now a lawyer, he was threatening to shoot all of us at any, like he was a second away from doing that. And he said it 3 times. Of course, I didn't know at the time what was being said. I could feel the tense atmosphere and I could see it in this guy's eyes that, oof, that's something that doesn't come across in the movie, is that I looked into this guy's eyes and I remember thinking, man, it looked like someone who's been harboring a deep, dark secret for 26 years. You could see the stress, the toll that it had taken on his face and his eyes. Like, I'll never forget it, man. It was haunting.
That must have been a pretty intense moment. Watching that now, he's the man that's up in the window.
Yes. Yeah. He had the windowsill, and he had one hand above, and he had this other hand that was down below. We all speculated that he had the gun right there, but he was doing this to the cameraman. And I'd been working with Dave West for some time, and Dave said it was chilling. Like he was just looking him right in the eye and going like this, the cameraman, right. You guys, bullets are about to start flying. Kept saying, bullets are about to start flying. You guys are going to get in trouble. I didn't know because it was all happening really quickly in Portuguese. I found out.
Obviously, the guy had no reservations about shooting you.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, I don't know what was said to him, but I'm sure it was, I'm sure he was threatened to keep his mouth shut. I have no doubt about that.
Well, for those listening to us, if you haven't seen this documentary, Moment of Contact, find it. It's where can they find it? We found it on Prime, Amazon Prime.
So if you're going to rent it on Amazon because it's the cheapest. If you're going to buy it, do it from iTunes or Vimeo, because you get like, I don't know, almost 2 hours of bonus material for the same price. But that does not come with Amazon. If you buy it on Amazon, it doesn't come with that. They don't tell you. So
Right.
iTunes and Vimeo. And if your audience wouldn't mind taking a moment and rating the film, it's tremendously helpful for us to do that. iTunes
Now,
or
James,
Amazon.
do you have a website or something that people can go to? And no, that's a no.
I do have the phenomenonfilm.com,
Uh-huh.
thephenomenonfilm.com. But I
Okay.
haven't looked at that website in about 2 years.
Hey, Patricia, can you pop all his movies up there on that one? So there you have it. Give us a little
Wow.
bitty synopsis of what's up with these movies now, and where can you find them?
Google them. They're over on free platforms. I know, like Tubi, and some are on Amazon. Some are on free streaming platforms. You just kind of Google them. They're out there.
And I can tell everyone that's listening to this, every single one of every one of his documentaries are well worth whatever it takes to view these. These things are eye openers. They are the truth. And I can tell you, after all of my years as a director here in Arizona, chasing and investigating UFOs for the Mutual UFO Network, James Fox is spot on with every single one of these documentaries. James, I cannot commend you enough. What you have done for the UFO community with these movies is priceless. And we're gonna close up a little.
Show the trailer to Moment of Contact.
Yes, Moment of Contact is out there. You can run the trailer. I was going to run it here tonight, but I don't think we have time. But James, so what have you got going on now looking forward?
Well, so the last couple of films that I did, The Phenomenon, I got to meet former Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. Thank you, George Knapp, for that.
Okay.
He really was very influential behind the scenes for months. And he planted the seed. He confirmed what we all suspected, and that is that what the evidence that's been released is only the tip of the iceberg. And then when I went to Brazil this last time for the finishing of Moment of Contact, I learned through 4 separate military men that I met with, including a radar operator, control officer,
right,
that confirmed the Americans' involvement, and that at the very least, the bodies and possibly the craft ended up in America. And so as a continue to my investigations, I want to walk the halls of Congress, talk to people in the task force, current and past, and intelligence communities, and find out where this evidence is and who has the authority to release it.
Perfect. And I can say that I commend you for your courage. Seriously, James.
Oh, thank you.
You have stepped forward, and it takes a lot of courage to do this. I know. So we're going to wrap it up there. I want to thank everybody for.
Yep.
If you have nothing else you want to tell the audience about what you're doing,
I have to run to another on-camera thing right now.
Yeah, yes, you do. That's why we need to wrap this up. But I want to thank everybody for tuning in and viewing James Fox. He's the movie producer. He's the director, and he's responsible for all these great movies. And I can tell you that you won't be disappointed. You sit down and watch these. So on behalf of James, myself, and James, myself, and Patricia Wilkinson, my program manager who's behind the scenes, I want to thank you and have a good night.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.
Bye.